Alright Oddsock squad, grab your flashlights, tighten your shoelaces and maybe put on some oven mitts because we're diving headfirst into the spooky maze-filled madness of Dark Chambers. Picture this, Pac-Man decided to take a ghost hunting holiday in a haunted mansion, tripped over a few rugs and then thought, hey, why not collect some treasures while I panic at every corner? Yeah, that's the chaos that we're dealing with. This game is maze adventure that will test your patience, your reflexes, and your sense of direction.
Someone has been changing my marks. What a horrible place this is. It's not fair.
Every hallway could hide a ghoul, and every corner might be a trap. It's dark, it's creepy, and it's confusing, like trying to navigate IKEA while blindfolded. And trust me, if you think you're lost now, just wait, this game has a way of making you question reality. Enemies pop out of walls, treasures are tricky to grab, and the tension is so high that even a skeleton would be sweating. I mean, if I had a nickel for every time a ghost scared me, well, I'd have enough to buy more coins to feed into this arcade if it ever existed back in the day. And yes, there are moments in this game where you'll mutter things under your breath, and you'd never say at the dinner table unless your dinner guests are also 8-bit ghosts. And let's talk about the hazards. You'll dodge monsters, navigate invisible walls, and occasionally bump into nothing while panicking, thinking it's an enemy. It's the perfect place to test your reflexes, your memory, and your willingness to scream at a television. I half expected my Evercade to give me a motivational pep talk like, you can do this. Oh, never mind, here's some more enemies. It's a perfect place to test your reflexes, your memory, and your willingness to scream at your television. Being that I never got to play Dark Chambers on the Atari 7800, getting it on the Evercade was fantastic, and it was a little bit special for me because this game is my kind of jam. So whether you're here for heart-pounding thrills, retro chaos, or just to see me lose my mind in 8-bit darkness, you're in the right place. Dark Chambers is where every corridor is a surprise, every ghost has a personal vendetta, and your thumbs might demand a union contract by the end of it. Let's light the way, or at least pretend we know where we're going, because in this game, orientation is a suggestion, not a rule. As always, we'll be looking at the story, the sound, and the gameplay, and a little later on, I'll let you guys know my Evercade stats on how long it took me to complete Dark Chambers. But before we do that, this game has a little bit of a retro surprise because it's not on an Evercade cartridge. That's right, this is a bonus game that is included if you own both the Atari 1 and Atari 2 collections and put them both in the VS slot at the same time, and that unlocks this game. So I actually really enjoyed this game when I first played it on the Atari Super Pocket that I got for my birthday. And I started to wonder, geez, I would really like to play this on my Evercade. I wonder what cartridge it comes with. And after a bit of Google researching, I found that you could only actually get the original Dark Chambers version, which was still really cool, but I wanted to play the 7800 version. And I found out a very clever secret. That if you insert both Atari Collection 1 and Atari Collection 2 into your Evercade system on the VS, at the same time, you unlock the hidden 7800 version of Dark Chambers. It's like the game is rewarding you for being curious and a little obsessive with your retro collection. Suddenly, this secret gem is unlocked, and I found that I just stumbled onto a treasure chest full of ghosts, mazes, and 8-bit chaos. Honestly, discovering it this way made me kind of feel extra special. It's like the game itself was giving me a high five for my detective work. So yes, this isn't just a random retro port, it is a clever hidden little Easter egg for the Evercade. And most players might never see it, considering both Atari Collection 1 and 2 are now legacy. And it makes playing it now feel extra special. It's a reward for the curious, the persistent, and the slightly crazy gamers who like to mash buttons, try weird combinations, and explore every corner of their system. You'll probably really need to hunt both of these games down now on eBay or some second-hand markets, but please just beware of scalpers, because nothing says Haunted Maze of Horror quite like paying triple the price for a cartridge. But if you can get your hands on the Atari Collection 1 and 2 for your Evercade, then it's probably worth putting them both in and playing this Dark Chambers for the Atari 7800 game, because it's a definite thrilling type of title. It's a game that I can definitely say I'll keep coming back time and time again for. Now, I can't say that I paid anything for this game because it's a bonus game. So for me to get my $10 per hour equivalent ratio, I really just need to hit the play button. And I did. And these are the results. I played and completed this game in 45 minutes, giving me half a cent per hour. So it's the biggest bargain currently I have ever done. But then again, I won't go into what I paid for the Atari Collection 1 and 2, because if I did, that could be a different story. I had a play count of 1, I didn't use any load counts, and a save count of 6. Let's take a look at the story. So Dark Chambers is a fantasy dungeon crawler with absolutely no real story. Your only goal here is survival. You wander through dark, maze-like levels facing a variety of enemies while collecting treasures and keys. And that's about it. No epic backstory, no plot twists, just you and your bow and a lot of skeletons. And yes, I guess you could say the skeletons are bare bones opponents. The game is a top-down shooter, and it instantly reminded me of one of my old school favourites, Gauntlet, though in a much more retro stripped-down form. Levels are packed with enemies swarming from all directions, and every step feels like a puzzle. Your character, a simple adventurer sprite in a tunic, armed with a bow, no dialogue, no name, just straight up action, though you could probably joke that your adventurer is shooting for a career in archery. You'll face zombies, rafts, skeletons, and even the Grim Reaper, and if you're lucky enough to grab treasures along the way, it's basically finders keepers. Though I imagine the skeletons might mutter, "Hey, that's my ribcage." A big part of the fun is trying to beat your high score, and you'll run through the maze dodging enemies, firing arrows and grabbing treasure, always chasing that number at the top of the screen. Every death feels like a lesson, every level cleared makes you just a little more determined to go further the next time, and because at the end of the day, you're really just chasing your own digits, not glory. If you let your imagination wander, you might picture a story. Perhaps you're an adventurer trapped in an endless labyrinth of monsters, cursed to survive day after day, searching for a legendary treasure hidden deep in the darkness. Maybe you're a hero trying to save a lost kingdom, or maybe the dungeon is a twisted playground created by a mischievous wizard. The possibilities are endless, but it's all in your imagination because none of that exists. But then you remember the game doesn't explain any of that. There's no lore, no character names, no kingdom to save. The story, it's just pure imagination.
You're doing it.
Doing what?
Using your imagination, Peter.
The game, just survival, and honestly that's part of the charm. You're left to fill in the blanks yourself while trying desperately not to get eaten. When you play this, you need to remember that the game was released in 1988 for the Atari 7800. This was developed by Sculptured Software, and it's pure fantasy, pure arcade chaos, and pure survival. And while it lacks story, the frantic action, retro graphics, and the thrill of dodging monsters make it memorable. Plus, if you ever wonder why the Grim Reaper is there, just remember, he's really just dying to meet you. For the odd sock score on Dark Chambers, I give it a 2 out of 10, and that's being generous. The game has absolutely no narrative, no character motivations, and no world building. You're essentially thrown into a maze of monsters with a bow and told to survive, and that's it. That's all it is. No evil overlord to defeat, no reason why the monsters are there, just survival for survival's sake. And back in the day, fantasy games often leaned heavily on imagination to fill in the blanks. Think of Dungeons and Dragons or early computer fantasy adventures. Players crafted their own stories, their own motivations, and their own quests, because the games themselves didn't hand you a narrative on a platter. Maze-like survival games like Gauntlet or Wizardry focused on exploration, resource management, and combat rather than a written storyline. The thrill came from navigating dark corridors, avoiding traps, and figuring out how to survive, and the story was whatever you imagined it as you played. Dark Chambers fits squarely in that tradition. It's a fantasy setting, rafts, skeletons, zombies, the Grim Reaper, but there's no explanation for why they're all there, what your character is doing beyond surviving, or even what the treasure actually represents. So you're left to fill in all the gaps yourself, which can be fun for players who like to imagine their own lore, but if you're looking for a structured story, then this game offers almost nothing. So while the gameplay captures the feel of maze-like fantasy adventures, the story is essentially non-existent, making it feel more like a high-score chase and a survival exercise than an actual narrative journey. It's charming in a retro arcade sense, but in terms of storytelling, it's a firmly 2 out of 10. A reminder of how many games in the late 80s relied on player imagination to create their own story. Let's take a look at the sound. The soundscape of Dark Chambers on the Atari 7800 is surprisingly charming, especially when you consider the limitations of the hardware. Built around the TIA, which is the Television Interface Adapter chip, the game only had basic audio capabilities, which meant that developers had to be clever with every beep, bop, and twang. From the moment the title screen music kicks in, it sets the tone perfectly. The simple, catchy melody immediately pulls you into the dungeon crawling world, evoking that nostalgic retro arcade feel and putting you in the mindset of survival and exploration. It's not flashy, but it's memorable, and it almost feels like the game is promising an adventure before you even pick up your bow. Once you jump into the gameplay, the in-game sounds are minimal yet very effective. Every arrow fired releases a sharp pew pew, giving your attacks weight and clarity. Defeating enemies triggers a quick pop or a zap, instantly confirming that a skeleton raffle zombie has been dispatched. And collecting treasures or keys comes with a subtle ding, rewarding exploration and discovery. The sounds being so simplicity basically ensures that they enhance the gameplay without becoming overwhelming, keeping the focus squarely on survival. The minimalist audio also reflects the technological constraints of the era, with only 2 audio channels available on the TIA chip. There are no room for complex soundtracks or layered effects. While some might see this as a limitation, the restraint actually adds to the charm. You find yourself more immersed in the maze-like levels, imagining the story as you go while the beeps, twangs, and the zaps mark every action. Compared to other dungeon crawlers of the time, Dark Chambers took a much more restrained approach to this sound. Games like Gauntlet had richer, more dynamic audio, but the Atari 7800 version of Dark Chambers relies on atmosphere generated by gameplay itself, rather than complex music or effects. Interestingly, the earlier Atari 8-bit version, which used the Pokey chip, had more advanced audio, showing just how much hardware impacts a game's feel. On the 7800, the sparse sound design contributes to the retro charm, emphasizing careful movement, strategy, and the thrill of survival. In the end, while Dark Chambers doesn't deliver a sweeping orchestral score or cinematic audio experience, its sound design complements the frantic maze-like gameplay beautifully. The title screen music is a standout, instantly putting you in that dungeon crawling mindset, and every beep, zap, and ding during gameplay reinforces the action while keeping you engaged. It's a reminder of the creativity required of early developers working within hardware limitations, and it makes surviving the dark corridors even feel more satisfying. Even decades later, the audio here retains that nostalgic retro vibe, making the Atari 7800 version of Dark Chambers pretty damn memorable. So for the Oddsock score on Dark Chambers, I rate it a 5 out of 10, right smack in the middle. It's not going to blow your odd socks off, but it won't make you want to jam cotton balls in your ears either. Think of it as vanilla ice cream of retro audio. It's simple, dependable, and somewhat still hits the spot when you're in the mood. The intro audio actually starts things off with a bit of flair. There's this mysterious little tune that gives you that "oh, something spooky's about to happen" vibe, and it kind of whispers, "come on, step into this dungeon if you dare." You half expect Vincent Price to pop up and narrate your doom. It's simple, but very effective. Like the game's equivalent of a movie trailer that's better than the movie itself. It gets you hyped, then promptly says, "right, that's all you're getting, now go fend for yourself." Once you're actually in the game though, silence. Absolute silence. No background music, no dramatic dungeon themes, just you, your thoughts, and the occasional thwip of your bow. It's like wandering through a haunted house where the ghosts are on their lunch break, but honestly, it kind of works for this style of game. That quiet lets you focus more, and it makes you feel like every step could be your last. I got this weird survival instinct energy to it, like it's all tense and you're cautious and you're thinking, "I swear I heard something over there," and spoiler, you didn't. It's just your imagination. The sound effects themselves are doing all the heavy lifting here. Your weapon fires off a crunchy little whip, that kind of sound like someone flicking a rubber band at evil. When your arrow connects, there's a satisfying plunk and it lets you know you've made contact, kind of like the world's oldest hit marker. And when you finally find that ladder to the next level, the game rewards you with this short, cheerful little jingle that's pure dopamine. It's like the developers went, "hey, we know you've been playing through pixelated hell, so here's a 5-second song and a pat on the back." The whole thing has this classic Gauntlet-style charm, minimal, focused, and oddly immersive. Every sound matters because there's not much else going on, and you won't be humming any of it in the shower, but you'll remember the vibe. It's dungeon crawling at its purest, quiet, tense, and just a little bit nerve-wracking. If anything, Dark Chambers sounds like what would happen if your Atari was trying to be dramatic. It's all atmosphere and no fluff, and somehow, that silence ends up being part of the fun. Let's take a look at the gameplay. So Dark Chambers has this classic dungeon crawling charm. It's slow, steady, and full of moments where you're not sure if you're exploring a maze or just hopelessly lost. Either way, you'll be bumping into walls, grabbing keys like a hoarder, and firing off arrows at anything that twitches. If you've ever played Gauntlet, this one's going to feel very familiar. You get your hero, you descend into pixelated chaos, and you clear out rooms full of monsters, skeleton ghosts, and things that look like they've escaped a bad 8-bit dream. It's simple but strangely addictive. You move through level and level, collecting treasure, finding food, which always seems to appear after you've lost half your health, and searching for the magical ladder to the next dungeon floor. The pacing is where things get interesting, or depending on your patience, slightly sleep-inducing. It's slower than your average arcade rush, and that's kind of the point. Dark Chambers isn't about pure reflex, it's about survival. You just can't charge in swinging. Your arrows have travel time and enemies soak up damage, and you'll quickly learn that retreating is just as important as attacking. It's tactical in that old school way, where you're constantly thinking, "can I take on one more skeleton before I leg it?" There's a satisfying rhythm once you get into it, exploring, fighting, grabbing loot, and trying not to die. It's the kind of game that rewards careful play, but also punishes curiosity. Every time I saw some treasure, I had that "ooh, shiny" moment, only to discover it was a trap. Thanks game, I'm now officially afraid of treasure. The variety of enemies keep things fresh enough, though don't expect huge surprises. You'll be battling colour-swapping versions of familiar foes, each one slightly tougher than the last. Basically, it's the video game equivalent of same soup, different spice. Still, when you're deep in the dungeon, low on health and surrounded, it does get tense. And the lack of music actually helps here too. I'm sure multiplayers will make things a bit more fun here, mostly because it gives you someone else to blame when you both get swarmed, and that's really where Dark Chambers shines. Not in this fast-paced action, but in that old-school co-op chaos where you're both shouting, "don't steal my food." So yeah, Dark Chambers isn't flashy, but it's solid. It's a little bit clunky, sure, a little bit repetitive, maybe, but also weirdly relaxing. It's a game you can zone out to while pretending you're conquering an evil labyrinth, instead of just trying to find your way out another brown and grey hallway. Overall, it's a steady crawl through nostalgia. It's part strategy, part patience tests, and part archaeological dig through Atari's past. For the odd sock score on the gameplay, I'm giving Dark Chambers a surprising 8 out of 10. And honestly, I didn't even see that coming. My plan was to fire it up just for a few minutes. You know, that classic, I'll just test it out before dinner move. But before I knew it, my dinner was cold, the sun had gone down, and I was deep in dungeon number who knows what, muttering to myself like a medieval treasure hoarder. This game has that sneaky charm where you think it's simple. And it is, but it gets you hooked in pretty fast. And it's that simplicity that makes it brilliant. There's no overcomplicated setup, no dialogue boxes explaining why you're in a dungeon full of skeletons. You're just there, surviving, exploring, and figuring it out as you go. It's adventure in the purest, most pixelated form. And every new floor feels like a gamble. Are you about to find a shiny new treasure, or accidentally open a door straight into a monster meeting? Half the fun is not even knowing. It's the perfect pick up and play experience, easy to start, hard to stop. The controls are straightforward and the gameplay loop is addictive. And just that constant mix of danger and reward keeps you glued. You'll be telling yourself just one more ladder, but then that one ladder turns into 3, and then 5. And then suddenly you're playing Dark Chambers as if it's the Lost Hours of My Life edition. Now, what really impressed me was how Dark Chambers balances simplicity with strategy. Sure, you can charge in arrows blazing and feel like a dungeon Rambo, but good luck surviving for pretty long. The smarter approach is to play like a sneaky adventurer, weaving between enemies, grabbing the loot and making a run for it when things get a little dicey. It's a constant dance between bravery and panic, and most of the time, panic wins. The difficulty curve also keeps things spicy. At first you're thinking, this isn't so bad, casually zapping enemies and grabbing treasure. Then a few levels in, you realise the monsters have upgraded their gym memberships or something, and suddenly you're running for your life. Every step deeper into the dungeon feels more intense, and you start planning your moves like you're defusing a bomb. One wrong twitch, and it's game over. And yet that's what makes it addictive. The tension, the rhythm, the reward of surviving just one more floor, it all builds into this weird mix of stress and satisfaction that keeps you coming back. It's the kind of game that taps into that old school just one more go magic. You die, you grumble, you immediately press start again. Dark Chambers nails that feeling of venturing into the unknown. It's a mix of curiosity, danger, and a tiny bit of, what am I actually doing with my life? But when you finally clear through a section or outsmart a swarm of enemies, it feels genuinely rewarding. That satisfaction hits like finding a fiver in your jeans pocket, pure unexpected joy. It's not trying to reinvent the wheel. Just roll that wheel straight into a dark dungeon and hope it comes back covered in gold and monster guts. It's simple, it's addictive, and it's dangerously good fun. Dark Chambers proves that sometimes the best games are the ones that don't overthink themselves. It's a pixelated time trap, and one I will walk straight into happily again, time after time. So overall, I'm giving Dark Chambers a 5 out of 10, and hear me out before the dungeon monsters come for me. The gameplay, absolutely brilliant, tight, responsive, and dangerously addictive, like just one more floor addictive, and I started off thinking I'd just explore for 5 minutes and ended up in deep, pixelated chaos, dodging enemies and hunting treasure like my life depended on it. It's one of those games that gets under your skin in the best possible way. But then there's that story, or should I say the complete absence of one. You're thrown into a dark dungeon with zero explanation. Who are you? Why are you even here, and why does every ladder lead deeper underground when any sensible person would be climbing out? I've so many questions, and Dark Chambers answers none of them for me. It's like being dropped off at IKEA without a map. You just wander around. You fight your way through strange creatures and hope you find an exit before you starve. And that's what really lets this game down. The world feels cool, it's mysterious and it's full of potential, but it never tells you why, and you're risking your life and limb in the world's most dangerous basement. Give me something here. A cursed crown, a missing pizza delivery, a monster that owes me rent. Anything to explain why I'm running around like a medieval exterminator. Still, I can't stay mad at it. The gameplay loop is so damn fun and the combat feels so satisfying that even without a story, I keep coming back. The mix of exploration, strategy and mild panic makes it one of those I'll just play one more run kind of games. Spoiler, is never just one more run. It's gonna be 2 AM and all your snacks are gone and your thumbs are begging for mercy. So yeah, Dark Chambers lands squarely 5 out of 10 overall for me, half dungeon crawling brilliance and half narrative black hole. It's like a really good sandwich with no filling. Sure, it's tasty, but you know you could have had something truly great if you just added a bit of middle ground. Still, I'll be back to play it again. The gameplay is just too good not to. It's the kind of game that you keep in your system just in case. Like that one mate who always tells you that they're done with spicy food, but every time you go out, orders the Vindaloo. Dark Chambers might not have that lore to hook you in, but it's got the gameplay to keep you crawling back. Literally. Thank you so much for watching another Deep Dive Evercade completion review, and this one was a little bit special. This was a bonus game that I only got to play, firstly on my Super Pocket, before doing this research. So remember to give me a like, subscribe and comment down below and let me know if you've managed to own Atari 1 and 2, put that in and got to play this bonus game also. Until next week guys, stay odd, stay awesome, and we'll see you for another Deep Dive review in a week's time. See you later guys.
Woo!